The Chi Season 8 Episode 4. Nuck has been lying, manipulating, and getting away with everything for a long time now. He killed Pastor Zeke. He's been hiding it. And for a while, it looked like he was going to keep getting away with it forever. But here's the thing. The truth has a way of crawling out from the dark, no matter how deep you try to bury it. And right now, in Season 8 of the Chi, the walls are closing in on Nuck faster than he even realizes. Tiff, the one person who stood by him through everything, is no longer sure about who she's sleeping next to at night. Bari, the one person Nuck thought he could control, is now working with his biggest enemy. And Victor, the man who walked away from the streets to live clean, is being pulled right back in because Rege refuses to let anyone around him have peace. Everything that has been building for the past 3 episodes is about to explode. And I'm telling you right now, Episode 4 is going to change this entire season. So let's break it all down. Let's start with the biggest thing that happened in Episode 3, because honestly, this is the moment that changes everything going forward. Tiff learned the truth about Nuck. Or at least enough of the truth to make her start questioning everything she thought she knew about him. And that is a massive turning point, not just for their relationship but for the entire direction of this season. When Lania told Tiff that Nuck may have been the one who killed Pastor Zeke, it hit differently. Because this wasn't some random accusation from someone on the street. This came from someone close enough to the situation to know details. And Tiff is smart. She's always been smart. She's not the kind of woman who hears something like that and just brushes it off. So when she went to Nuck and confronted him about it, we all leaned forward in our seats. We wanted to see how Nuck would handle being put on the spot by the one person he actually cares about. And what did Nuck do? He denied it. Of course he did. He looked Tiff right in the face and denied every single thing. But here's what gave him away, and here's what Tiff definitely noticed. The very first thing Nuck wanted to know was who told her. Not, what are you talking about? Not, baby, I would never do something like that. His immediate reaction was to find out the source. And that reaction told Tiff more than his denial ever could. Because an innocent man doesn't react by immediately hunting for the person who spoke up. A guilty man does. Now, Tiff hasn't completely turned on Nuck just yet. She's still processing. She's still in that painful middle ground where you don't want to believe the worst about someone you love, but the evidence keeps stacking up and you can't look away from it anymore. That is the most dangerous place for Nuck to have Tiff right now. Because a woman who is halfway convinced is more dangerous than a woman who has already made up her mind. She's still watching him. Still paying attention to every move he makes, every lie he tells, every time his story doesn't quite add up. And Nuck, being the kind of man he is not making things better for himself. Because after that confrontation with Tiff, what does Nuck do? He goes and beats Bari up. Badly. And throws him out. And the reason he does that is because Bari was the one who talked to Lania about Zeke. So in Nuck's mind, Bari is the problem. Bari is the leak. And if Nuck can just get rid of Bari, maybe the truth stays buried. But what Nuck doesn't understand, what he has never understood, is that you cannot beat the truth into silence. You can delay it, sure. You can suppress it for a while. But every time Nuck tries to cover something up by using violence, he creates a new enemy. And right now he really cannot afford more enemies. So here's where we are with Tiff going into Episode 4. The synopsis tells us that Tiff is going to grapple with her feelings for Nuck after a vulnerable confession. And that word vulnerable is very interesting. Because it means Nuck is going to try something different. He's going to open up to Tiff. He's going to try to use emotion to hold on to her instead of just denial. He's going to try to make her feel sorry for him, or feel connected to him, before she makes any final decisions. And honestly, that might work. At least for a little while. Because Tiff still has feelings for him. That hasn't gone away overnight. But here's the problem with Nuck's strategy. Tiff is no longer just thinking about Zeke. Once you start pulling on that thread, the whole thing unravels. She's going to start thinking about Rob. She's going to start thinking about Alicia. She's going to start adding up all the deaths and tragedies that have surrounded Nuck over the years and asking herself one very uncomfortable question. How many of those were really accidents? And once Tiff starts asking that question, there is no going back. No confession, no matter how vulnerable or emotional. is going to stop her from eventually landing on the truth. It's just a matter of time now. And let me just say this clearly. I think Tiff is going to start moving against Nuck. Not all at once. Not dramatically, not with a confrontation in episode 4. But quietly, carefully, and intelligently. Tiff is going to start positioning herself on the other side of this. And when she finally moves, Nuck is not going to see it coming because he is too busy being arrogant to notice. Now let's talk about Bari. Because honestly, out of everything happening in the Chi right now, Bari's storyline is the one that has me the most worried. Not excited, worried. Because this young man keeps finding himself at the bottom of one hole. And instead of climbing out, he digs another one right next to it and jumps in. After Nuck beat him up and threw him out, Bari had every reason to step back and think clearly. He had just been physically thrown out by someone who was supposed to be his person. He had nothing. No money, no backup, no plan. And that is exactly the kind of moment where you see what someone is really made of. Some people, when they hit rock bottom, find a way to build something real. They get humble. They get smart. They ask for help from the right people. But Bari? Bari looked at rock bottom and decided the fastest elevator backup was Rege. And that might be the single worst decision he has made in this entire series. Let's think about what Bari tried to do first. He went to Emit and asked for a job at Smokey's. And that told us a lot about where Bari's head was at. He wanted to go legitimate. He wanted to try the honest route for once. And Emit isn't heartless. He gave Bari a chance. But Emit also isn't naive. He's not going to hand someone like Bari a position with any real responsibility right away. He's going to start him at the bottom and see what he does with it. And the problem is that the bottom doesn't pay enough. Not quickly enough. Not for someone who is already underwater with debt, and now doesn't even have his car because it got repossessed right there on the street in front of him. That scene was painful to watch because it wasn't just about the car. It was about Bari's dignity. It was about a man watching the last symbol of the life he was trying to hold on to get taken away from him in public. And that is exactly the moment Rege walked in. And let me tell you, Rege did not show up by accident. Rege is calculating. Rege has been watching Bari. He knew Bari was vulnerable. He knew Bari was desperate. And desperate people are the easiest people in the world to recruit, because they don't have the luxury of asking too many questions. When you are broke, humiliated, and watching your car get towed away, and someone shows up offering you money and a purpose, you take it. You tell yourself it's just temporary. You tell yourself you'll do this one thing, and then get out. But that's not how Rege works. There is no one thing with Rege. There is no get out, once you're in. The job Rege is going to give Bari in episode 4 is going to be the most dangerous thing Bari has ever been asked to do. And I think we need to understand what that means in the context of this show. Bari has done things before. He's not innocent. But there is a level of darkness in Rege's world that Bari has never fully crossed into. And once you cross that line, you can't uncross it. You don't come back from what Rege is going to ask of him as the same person. And the tragic part is that Bari, sitting there with no car and no money and no options, cannot see any of that. All he can see is the immediate problem in front of him. And Rege is the only one offering a solution. Now here's where it gets really dangerous. And this is the part one think most people aren't thinking about yet. Rege is not just using Bari as muscle or as a runner. Rege is smart enough to know that Bari's real value is in his connection to Nuck. Bari knows Nuck's operation. He knows how Nuck moves, who Nuck trusts, where Nuck is vulnerable. And Rege is going to use that information. Whether or not Bari realizes he's giving it up, Rege is going to extract everything useful from him and turn it into a weapon against Nuck. Which means Bari isn't just working for Rege. He's becoming the tool that Rege uses to dismantle Nuck's entire world. And that puts Bari in an impossible position. Because Nuck is going to figure out what Bari is doing eventually. And when he does, Bari is going to be stuck between two of the most dangerous men in the city with no way out and no one left to call. I genuinely think Bari could get killed before this season ends. Not because I want that. I've actually always rooted for Bari to find his way. But because the choices he's making right now are the choices that get people killed on this show. He's being pulled in every direction by people who don't actually care about him. And the longer he stays in the middle, the more likely it is that one of them decides he knows too much to be left alive. The synopsis confirms that Bari is going to settle into his new job in episode 4. And that word, settle, is chilling. Because it means he's not just dipping his toe in. He's committing. He's making this his life now. And every episode after this is going to show us just how deep that hole gets before Bari either finds a way out or gets buried in it. Now let's shift to something that actually gave me hope this episode. Because between Tiff's heartbreak and Bari's terrible decisions, we needed something to root for. And we got it. Victor and Shad were finally cleared. Their innocence was proven. They were released from prison. And I know I speak for a lot of people when I say, it was about time. But of course, this is the chi, so even the good moments come wrapped in something painful. Because the very second Victor walks out of prison, the first major thing he learns is that Tiff and Nuck are together. And you could see it on his face. That hit him hard. Not because Victor is the type of man to fall apart, he's not. But because Victor, underneath all the toughness and the street credibility, genuinely loves Tiff. He always has. And spending time in prison for something he didn't do while the woman he loves moved on with someone else. That's a specific kind of pain that doesn't just go away because you're finally free. And then he actually sees them together. He comes to meet Tiff and Nuck is right there. And that moment between Victor and Tiff in episode 3 said more without words than most scenes say with a full page of dialogue. You could see it. You could feel it. Whatever was between Victor and Tiff didn't disappear. It's still there. It has always been there. And the fact that Tiff is now starting to question everything about Nuck makes that tension even more complicated and more interesting going forward. Because here's what I think is actually happening with Tiff and Victor. Even if neither of them is saying it out loud yet. Tiff is realizing that she chose the wrong man. Not just because Nuck might be a murderer, though that's a pretty significant reason, but because Victor represents something completely different. Victor is someone who actually cares about her safety and her future. Nuck cares about Nuck. And Tiff, who has always been sharp enough to read people, is finally reading Nuck clearly for the first time. And the clearer she sees Nuck, the more she's going to think about Victor. Now, Tiff giving Victor and Shad the money to start their own business. That was not just a friendly gesture. That was Tiff making a choice, even if she hasn't fully admitted it to herself yet. She is investing in Victor's future. She is putting herself in his world in a very real and concrete way. And Victor did something with that money that I think tells you everything you need to know about who he is. He bought his house back from Rege. He didn't spend it on himself. He didn't use it to get back into the street life. He used it to reclaim something that was his. Something that represented stability and home, and the life he was trying to build before everything went wrong. And with that one move, Trigg is back. Officially, symbolically, in every way that matters. Victor buying that house back is Victor drawing a line. He's saying, this is my territory, and I'm not going anywhere. And that is going to matter enormously in episode 4 because Rege has been expanding, recruiting, and building power while Victor was locked up. And now that Victor is out, now that he has resources and a purpose and something to protect again, Rege's dominance is going to be challenged. The big question going into episode 4 is whether Victor stays in the legal lane, or whether he has to go back to being Trigg in order to stop what Rege is doing. And I think we both already know the answer. Victor tried to leave that life behind. He genuinely did. But Rege is not going to allow anyone around him to live peacefully. He's going to go after Jake. He's going to use Bari. He's going to threaten everything Victor cares about. And at some point, Victor is going to decide that fighting Rege with good intentions and a business plan is not going to be enough. Trigg is going to have to come back. And when that happens, things are going to escalate fast. Let's talk about Rege. Because everything that's going wrong in this season has Rege's fingerprints on it somewhere. And I think we sometimes underestimate how calculated he is because he doesn't always look like the most threatening person in the room. But that's exactly what makes him dangerous. Rege doesn't need to be the loudest person at the table. He just needs to be the one who controls what's on the menu. Think about what Rege has been doing this season. He recruited Bari, a man who used to be inside Nuck's circle and knows exactly how Nuck operates. He held Victor's house over his head until Tiff's money gave Victor a way to buy it back. He's been positioning himself in ways that give him leverage over multiple people simultaneously. And the most terrifying thing about Rege is that he's patient. He doesn't need everything to happen at once. He's comfortable playing a long game. He sets his pieces on the board and waits for other people to make mistakes. And right now, everyone around him is making mistakes. Bari is making the mistake of thinking Rege is offering him a genuine opportunity. He's not. Rege doesn't do genuine. He does useful, and then he does disposable. Bari is useful right now because of what he knows and what he can do. But the moment Bari stops being useful, the moment he becomes a liability, Rege will cut him loose or worse. And Bari, in his current state of desperation, cannot see that because he doesn't want to see it. He needs this to work. He needs to believe that Rege is actually giving him a way out. And that need is going to get him hurt. Jake is another person Rege has in his sights, and this is the one that I think is going to come to a head in episode 4. Jake has been working incredibly hard to build something legitimate. He's expanding his business, he's thinking about the future, he's trying to be the version of himself that doesn't end up like the people around him who got swallowed by the streets. And that kind of ambition, in the world of the Chi, almost always draws attention from people who want to take a piece of it or use it for their own purposes. The synopsis tells us that Jake will expand his business in episode 4, but that unexpected drama is going to come with it. And I think that drama is going to be Rege. Because Rege has been watching Jake the same way he watched Bari. Looking for the moment when Jake is most exposed, most committed, most vulnerable to interference. And when Jake is celebrating his growth and his success, that's when Rege is going to make his move. Maybe it's a threat. Maybe it's a business deal that looks legitimate, but isn't. Maybe it's something more direct. But whatever it is, it's going to shake Jake. And it's going to pull Victor back into a situation he was trying to stay out of. Victor already told Jake at some point that if things got bad enough, Jake should be willing to shoot Rege. That tells you everything about how seriously Victor takes the threat that Rege represents. He wasn't saying that lightly. He wasn't being dramatic. He was telling his brother, this man is genuinely dangerous and you cannot afford to be naive about him. And now, with Rege moving against Jake's business, with Rege using Bari as a weapon against Nuck, with Rege basically inserting himself into every major storyline this season, we are moving toward a confrontation that feels inevitable. The question is not whether Victor and Rege are going to clash. That is coming no matter what. The question is how ugly it gets before it's over. And I think the answer is very ugly. Because Rege is not going to back down just because Victor is out of prison. If anything, Victor being out and immediately reclaiming his house probably made Rege more aggressive. Not less. Rege sees challenge as provocation. And Victor buying that house back was a direct challenge whether Victor intended it that way or not. Episode 4 is going to show us exactly how Rege responds to that challenge. And I think it's going to be shocking. Because Rege doesn't respond in ways you expect. He doesn't come at you directly when he can come at the people around you first. So before he ever goes after Victor himself, he's going to go after Jake, or Bari, or anyone else who is connected to Victor in a way that will hurt. And when Victor sees that happening, when he sees the people he loves being used as weapons against him, Trigg is going to come fully back. And it is not going to be pretty. Now I want to spend some time talking about Emit.